Can I ask you a couple questions about the big day?
Sure.
Sick. Well, I mean, you've surfed more big days than anyone, obviously, being the pioneer out there at Mavericks. And I've filmed a lot of sessions in the last 10 years out there, but from what I saw, it looked like the biggest day in history or in our lifetimes. Is that true?
There was like 100 Foot Wednesday, which was 2001. That was another gigantic swell and then it was, about 3-4 years ago, there was a giant swell that had waves breaking across the boat channel. This is a really dangerous harbor at times, but this swell was, with a 23-second average interval and then there was a 30-second component in it also. So in the afternoon when the swell really crescendoed, that's when the biggest waves came through. And the wave that Aloe caught, that thing just morphed. It's like it was a perfect combination of 24-second interval getting run over by 30-second interval and just jacking to the heavens.
Yeah, because I'm looking at that wave right now, and it's weird because I was on Instagram and I saw a photo from that day, and I instantly thought, this is Photoshop.
Right, exactly. It's like a cartoon drawing. And being in the lineup and seeing it was ridiculous. I mean, it just was so big. Pretty cool.
The crazy thing is, though, it's like only that big for like 5 seconds. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not trying to take anything away from the wave, but like it literally, and I know Nazare is more of like a shower than a grower, but Mavericks is definitely a grower. And this thing just grew into, and it had that like 5-10 second window where it literally looked like the biggest wave anyone's ever surfed in history.
Right. It was the perfect combination of all the confluence of height and interval and the perfect like slamming into the reef and everything going up.
Everything going up.
Yeah, there was nowhere else for it to go but up and out, and we rarely see waves that are that big, as hollow as a beach break barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy that big to be that hollow.
It's literally like, I don't think people that don't surf can understand. Like, this is nature, the earth itself's raw energy.
Yeah, I mean, so speaking of that raw energy and that getting those intervals, so like a 24-second interval in open ocean is moving like 40 miles an hour in open ocean, right? And a 30-second interval component is moving faster than that. And if those things converge at the perfect time where that wave hits the shelf, it just stops the bottom edge of that wavelength, and those speeds of that swell with the bottom stopping, it just like cracks the whip and just hurls it skyward and to the beach into this giant double up energy barrel. It's pretty, raw power.
You explained it to me in such a great way, because I was just imagining like, oh, it magically got big, but you're telling me what happened. The energy of the earth, the ocean slowed down in it, and then there must be a huge part of the reef that sticks up right there, so all that energy just went vertically.
Yeah, it's that wavelength was so deep and moving so fast, it's like being tripped at high speed. Right. That much. So those intervals are something that we really haven't seen and that allowed all that wave height and speed when it's tripped by the reef that is the bowl at Mavericks, or even the next second reef, third reef, when all that energy can't continue to carry through deep water, that wavelength stops at the bottom and everything goes up and over and out. And the way Mavericks is, it does grow, man. By the time like even the paddle days, by the time you catch the wave and get to your feet, the face grows like 10 feet or more. And it's just that recoil of hitting the reef and then going up and then out. It's what makes the reef at Mavericks so unique. It just comes out of deep water and it gets shallow. And so it really just trips. And, same thing with Piahi, Jaws. When that thing, the biggest waves, they're not as hollow right at takeoff, but the second bowl or the west bowl, it's, if it's big enough, it's hollow off the first side of things. But when you saw the first part of the peak of the wave, I mean, you could tell that there was more interval in the Mavericks waves than there were at the Jaws waves, just because they threw further. And then it hits the bowl, and the bowl at Jaws is just, that thing just spins and winds like no tomorrow. Really hollow.
Yeah. So what you're saying also is that there have been swells close to this size, but that wave just, the way it was angled, everything came together to make it the split second, possibly the biggest wave ever ridden, and possibly the biggest wave ever ridden at Mavericks. I mean, I know that this like measuring how big the wave kind of world record thing is kind of new, because I feel like there's been huge waves of you, huge waves of Ken Bradshaw, huge waves of at Mavericks that were like close to 100 feet. I feel like, I don't feel like I'm exaggerating, but I know that there's been just huge waves, because if you're just counting the split second of the peak, you know what I mean? I feel like there has been waves that are close to this. It's just in the details whether this is the biggest.
Yeah, I think, if you just look at the numbers, the possibility of it being the biggest are really, really good. Okay. Where we've had 20-second interval swells, and like during the making of Chasing Mavericks, there was a April 1st swell that was gigantic in the middle of the night, and we saw 60-foot faces right at first light. And by the time we got out there, we missed the biggest part of that swell, but we had to literally sit at the green can going out the boat channel and wait for a lull so that we could go out. It was whitewater all the way across the boat channel, and we had to wait for a lull to get out. So when you that's exactly what happened this swell. There's been a handful of swells that I've seen that where you had closeouts in the boat channel. And
what about the Santa Cruz Harbor got completely wiped out? It was like tidal waves. I mean, was the harbor up there like demoed too, or?
No, we've got the reef that extends from Mavericks and south, so that's the first break, knockdown of the energy, and then you have the outer wall, and which you can't get through, but it was actually putting like 1 foot waves on the beach inside the harbor, but inside the inner harbor it was just surge, and the boats are moving around pretty good. But it's graded down quite a bit. Like the tsunami, I watched the tsunami years ago from the Fukushima earthquake. We filmed the tsunami, and there were guys out surfing Mavericks, and right at like 8:15, all of a sudden, the water started draining out of the harbor, and there was a huge brown river going out into the middle of the bay, and the guys that were out at Mavericks all of a sudden were, hundreds of yards drawn off the reef to outer deep water. And then 15 minutes later, here comes the push, from draining the harbor to all of a sudden, here comes the rush of it back in, and boats broke loose, and the ab farm broke loose, and but after that whole next week, it was like if you had a bunch of people jump in the pool, and the refractions coming from all sides of the pool, it's like it took the ocean more than a week to stop refracting, the whole Pacific Ocean refracting. It was a weird thing. It had the weird energy for like a week. Like there was constant like reverb coming from you don't know where, but a long way away.
So you're saying that people were out at Mavericks when the tsunami hit from Japan?
Yeah, there were.
Did anyone ride it?
No, they got just pulled off the reef.
Oh.
And then as it pushed back in, waves broke. I don't know that anybody rode it. They just tried to get out of the water because it was really weird out there after that.
Oh, because they knew it was coming. Probably people on the radio.
Well, no, they were just out surfing Mavericks.
And they just felt off. Like, this is so weird.
It just, all of a sudden, the tsunami just like pulled them off the reef, right? Because water goes out. It just, all of a sudden, it retracts.
Oh my gosh.
And then it surged back in.
I have nightmares about that tsunami, and I'm always, like, in my mind, I'm, like, half asleep in bed, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, because I feel like I would have been out surfing that day. And then if that happens, because it could happen to surfers no matter where you're surfing, but it's like if the ocean starts going out to sea, is it better to paddle out and try to go underneath it?
Depends on, I don't think you're going to make it underneath it. It's one of those things where I think, if you can get to deep water, you're going to be fine. But if you look at what happened at Fukushima in Japan, or Phuket, like the boats that were in the water, they just were charging out to sea in Phuket, and it was really close. They made it out, and they made it over the waves, but they were already offshore. And I think surfers in the lineup.
So split second, what's your choice? If everything starts sucking out, are you trying to paddle to shore and run up the cliff, or are you paddling out? What's Jeff Clark's choice?
I'm getting away to the beach and scrambling to the top of the point.
Okay, I'm gonna have to consider that, because in my dream I always try to paddle out and go under it, but maybe that's not a good idea.
Well, I mean, we've got most of the places I surf have 80-foot, 60, 70, 80-foot cliffs, right? So if I can get out of the water and, quick enough to, if I can get up the cliff in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I think that's the best option.
Do you think, what about, like, comparing these waves to, like, Cortez and stuff? You still think it's the biggest wave ever surfed?
Well, I think...
Well, Mavericks is, the premier big wave spot in California. And I would say, honestly, the biggest wave in the continental United States. So, and then there's Jaws in Hawaii. It's definitely proving itself as one of the biggest waves in the world, if not the biggest wave in the world. But, you know, Nazare is consistently more the bigger wave in the world. But Mavericks is so
Portugal?
special. Yes, Portugal.
Yeah, that wave gets crazy. That's where the current world record holder is from,
Yes.
am I correct?
Sebastian Stoitner, correct.
And he rode, what, like a 100-foot wave?
86-foot wave.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you might have actually filmed a wave that was bigger.
I might have. We'll see. I don't know if it was 108 feet like Frank initially said, but, you know, the wave was big, and it was, you know, the biggest wave I've ever seen, the biggest wave Atlas ever surfed. It was pretty special.
Yeah, tell me about that day. Did you know it was going to be big like a few days out, or were you surprised?
Yeah.
What
So we
happened
actually
that
had
morning?
we had our eyes on that swell for a decent amount of time, because weirdly enough, it showed that long period swell would hit. But, you know, seeing a forecast from a week in advance, you never know what's going to happen. And we got a few days before, and that long period started to show. I mean, the day before, I have a clip of Luca, you know, getting probably a 40, 50-foot wave, like a big wave. And so we knew the following day, if the wind stayed off, that the waves would be really big. So, yeah, the plan was to go out the whole time, and it kind of just worked out perfectly.
Walk me through that morning. What time did you wake up and breakfast and head to the dock and all that?
No breakfast on days like that for me. I get some nerves, to be honest. Like I have zero appetite when I wake up. I usually don't sleep because I'm probably more excited than scared. I don't know, like, you know, those days out there are always the best days of my life, of my short 19-year-old life so far. But, you know, being out at Mavericks is something special, and when you know it's going to be as big as it was that day, you're not going to sleep. So I didn't sleep that much. I got to my buddy Drake's boat around 6 a.m., on the water around 6:30, and out at Mavericks by, you know, 6:40.
So you got down to the dock about 6. Was it light yet? Was it foggy? What was it like?
Super foggy. Couldn't see anything out of the harbor. You could hear the waves. It was very loud. And we knew that going out would be pretty sporty, which it was. It was pretty fun going out. It was definitely a ride. I got pretty wet on the way out. We were running from like probably 10 to 12 foot waves at Black Hand, and on the inside, just, you know, big ones were coming at us. So we ran away on the skis and finally made it out. And what was really interesting was that the size of the swell kind of cleared out Mavericks itself. So from the cliff, you couldn't see the wave at all. You couldn't see anything. But while you were out there was like a sort of halo of just open air that the swell cleared out. There was like minimal wind, no rain, no clouds. It was really cool.
Whoa, so you're saying that when you got out there was just like a bubble of like blue?
Right, it was just a bubble of like, I wouldn't say blue because it wasn't the nicest sunny day. It was still like dark out, but like there was significantly less cloud coverage out at Mavericks because the swell was so large. It just kind of took over the whole area.
Wow, so you're saying the power of the waves actually moved the fog out of the way?
Yeah, it was really cool.
Could you see the shore, or was it just like...
No, you couldn't see the shore. You could see the shore on the inside when you were going out, but you couldn't really see in. You could see like silhouettes of people on the hill watching, but that was it.
And they were, yeah, because I haven't seen hardly any cliff footage from that day, and I was always...
I haven't seen any cliff footage at all. I've seen one photo.
Because they were stuck behind that fog bank.
Exactly, the whole day.
Oh my gosh, that makes it just even weirder. Because this swell, it looks like the biggest swell in anyone's lifetime. Didn't it like destroyed the Santa Cruz Harbor? Like, that's never happened before.
Totally. And honestly, I feel like we've said this 2 years in a row now, which is pretty interesting. Last year, I think, don't quote me on this, but maybe it was 17 feet at 20 seconds, which is huge. Like, it was big last year, December 27th, maybe to 25th. I forget what the date was last year. But then this year, this swell came and we were like, holy moly, this thing's even bigger.
Oh, the recent one that was just gigantic?
Yeah, like did you think it was gigantic, or how do you compare that?
Yeah, it looked huge. I saw one photo of that one wave of Luca doing a bottom turn, like a backside bottom turn. He looks like Aki doing this backside bottom turn on this huge wave, and I'm like, oh man, that looks so sick. Like the wave just looks it looks perfect. It looks like a giant, like just a monster, but the wind and everything on the face of the wave just looks, I mean, he must have had so much fun on that wave.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like that looking. Well, I met Luca a couple of times, and I know he's training really hard. He works with Laird, and he's like a Laird's protege, and stuff. So and he's from Half Moon Bay, so I would expect to see him there when it was big, and it was great. The only photo that I ended up seeing was of him, and I was like, oh, killer, makes sense. That was what we were doing. I mean, there weren't that many tow surfers when we started. Pete and Skin Dog were towing, and then Mike and I got on it at like the 19, like I think 99. Yeah, 99. No, maybe the second half of the first half of 2000, and then we towed a little bit at the end of 2000, because the winters starting October, that kind of thing. We'd go down and we're like, we have to get used to driving the ski around. Made a bunch of mistakes, and then 2001. January 19th, 2001, we went to Cortez with Skinny and Pete, and man, that was one of the best days of my life. Like, I mean, total bluebird, giant waves. I got two giant tube rides that they missed. The video guy got it from like the boat, and he was like, it looked like he's 2 miles away, but you could still see that I pull up underneath it and disappear, and from the side, I disappear. So I'm deep if you see it from the side. and they missed it. Like Chang missed it. Dana Brown missed it. I couldn't believe it. I was coming in. After the day, I thought, oh man, my whole life is going to change right now. When that stuff's on the big screen, like my whole thing is going to completely, like, my image has just gone from being like, yeah, Brad's a good surfer. Whatever, he was number 2, number 1, number 2, sometimes number 1, finished number 2, and then, he's good. And then he quit, he got all weird and went and played music. I don't know what he was up to. Then I saw him at Chopu, and he stuffed a huge one. Okay, yeah, well, he's kind of, wow.
And Hollywood.
Okay, good.
Did he in Hollywood for a while, too?
He starred in a couple things in Hollywood, and I think he's playing bass in a band, and then he's, what's that? What's he doing now? Like, oh yeah, dude, now he's riding giant. I saw him in this music thing. He was playing in a band. I think I saw him smoking a cigarette, and then the next time I saw him, he was on a 60-foot wave. What the?